Right. So we probably should be going this one.
Yeah, okay. An intro thing? Hello, hi. I'm Louie, and I run this bar that we're in at the moment called Bar SK, named after SK Games. That was named after something ages ago. It's a small bar / gallery space for, I try to not use the term video games, but video games basically, interactive media, playful stuff, digital media, a lot of different stuff. And yeah, the stuff we show is usually short form, experimental, independent, crazy, rude, odd things. And we make a lot of controllers, we interact with the local community, we do a lot of cool stuff in Melbourne, because we're in Melbourne, by the way, did I mention that? And yeah, I previously did stuff in Perth, and then previous to that, I worked in Europe, previous to that, was at university,
You mentioned that before starting SK you worked overseas in game companies. Can you talk a bit about what that was like, what you were doing?
Gladly.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before I got to where I am now, I did university stuff in Perth, after high school sort of thing, did some game design stuff, which barely set me up, but it was just fun to do. And also allowed me to do university stuff, as in like work bad jobs at bars and mess around. Then I went to Europe to try to find work because there was nothing in Perth. So I went over to Denmark and I worked there in a small company called Kilo, making mobile games. And while I was there, we pumped out Subway Surfers, which did really well. And I worked on Frisbee Forever, which is great if you ever want a Frisbee game, official Frisbee game.
Cool. I've never played a good Frisbee game before, so I have to look it up.
You obviously haven't played Frisbee Forever 2,
Wow.
which is the best one. It was great. It was like a really good space to work. Mobile games were really, like, the free-to-play thing was just coming up really strong. So it was short turnover, interesting ideas. Like, it was really good working in that, like, small teams because it gave you a lot of chance to explore different roles and find out where you wanted to fit in games. I originally went in as like a concept artist and then ended up as a game design, level design, environment design kind of guy, which I liked a lot more. Also, I'm not very good at art, so decided against trying to pursue that as a career. Just gave up on art generally.
Fair enough.
I mean, drawing, not,
Yeah.
But so then when I moved back, like I was there for about a year and a half, and then I moved back because the opportunity came up to sort of get some space in Perth and have a bit of funding from the family at the time. We made a bunch of games as Game Jam games because I'd been to Nordic Game Jam and saw some really cool stuff. And also, while I was there, I saw the joy of playing stuff in physical spaces, which working in like mobile games you don't really get. So it was like going to Game Jam and seeing everyone just have a really good time. And then I came back to Perth and I thought, well, let's make some little Game Jammy games, some sort of fun multiplayer party games, and then we could have a party.
So is Bar SK kind of a result of a kickback to that, I guess, commercial side of gaming then?
It kind of is, and at the same time, it is a commercial venture.
Right.
I don't like to, I don't want to make anyone think this is a community-run project or a volunteer thing. Like, we have staff and we pay them, and even back when we made games in Perth, we had staff and we paid them, and we paid for the space, we paid for everything. And we were trying to make money out of it. We were trying to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who, especially in Melbourne, they have issues with that.
Right.
But I suppose I grew up with a small business family, and I don't see sustainability as a negative thing.
Right.
But it depends how you phrase it. A lot of people see it as profiteering or making money, whereas like as a small business owner, you kind of know that you don't make money. All the money goes back into the business. And ideally, you end up with a nice business at the end of it, but you don't make, like there's no profit out of this. I'm not, I pay my rent. So it's a weird space to be in where you're still involved in this creative sort of punk rock aesthetic.
It's interesting you brought up like the punk rock aesthetic, because I was thinking like indie like has been a buzzword for like a long time globally, and particularly in Melbourne, we're like an indie like capital and stuff. How do you feel like you fit in to that?
Well, I like the term independent because it's very it hasn't been corrupted the way the word indie has.
Right.
I feel like the term independent used to be more of a descriptor of this person is independent, as in they are not a subsidiary to a larger company.
Right.
Whereas now the term independent almost has more meaning than the term indie. Indie just means that they're not a subsidiary of a larger company, sort of thing. Right. But I mean, being independent doesn't mean you call all your own shots. Like, you still have to, you're at the whim of the market, of whoever may be looking at putting you on their platform. Like, the term has been diluted and doesn't really mean anything anymore. Right. But there are a lot of other terms that come up when we look at stuff like, trash art games, trash games, Playful media is an interesting term that a festival called a Maze that runs in Johannesburg and Berlin, they coined that as a descriptor. Yeah. Which I thought was really nice because it sort of shows that it's not necessarily video gamey stuff. We have the problem of if we say video games, people come in expecting video games and they expect traditional video games, and then they don't get that and they go away disappointed. And then the people who would probably enjoy the stuff in here don't come in because they, again, expect traditional video games and they just don't want to play that when they're out.
Yeah.
And I'd love to call it video games. I'd love to call it a video game bar, but I know that I wouldn't feel comfortable running a gaming bar.
Right. Yeah.
And the people would get in, again, they wouldn't have a good time, because what we show, we do get people who, just ask, what's the point of this game? And you're like, you just walk around the area, there's no point. And, how do I win? How do I kill people? How do I do this? And it's like, you just don't, that's it. So it's, it's all about people's expectations as they walk in, and also being inviting for people who walk in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we do the controller thing. Like, we try not to have Xbox controllers or like a keyboard and mouse set up with, WASD controls and stuff, because they're not as accessible.
So yeah, you were just talking about why you make controllers for accessibility and stuff. Is it also like more of just like a hobby thing for you, or does it have a deeper meaning, I guess?
Well, I think like it was an interesting hobby, but it's mostly about, I think the controller side of stuff is mostly about presentation. Right. And it's also about like the uniqueness of playing something in a physical space. And it's kind of like, so like before, when I was still at uni, like before I started doing any games stuff besides uni, I was writing, I was going to write a small series of articles. I was working at a bottle shop at the time, and I was just going to print them out and leave them on the counter. And they were going to be like a sort of companion thing of what you should drink when you're playing certain games.
Right.
And like things like, playing Red Dead Redemption, like you've got, like the cowboy aesthetic, but you don't really want to drink whiskey because then you'll get shit-faced because it's like such a long game. So you should drink something like, you don't want anything cold like a beer because that's too modern. You want like a dry red wine out of a dirty glass. And you can sit on that for a while, like while you're playing this game. And it was sort of like, it was what I found was the best companion to it. But the main point behind that was like, the game is not just a digital thing. It exists in a physical world in terms of how you play it. So, like making the controllers was kind of an extension of the game, and sometimes can be as playful as the game, or like sometimes can be the game.
Right. It kind of seems to harken back to like traditional arcade cabinet things a lot of the time. Is that like a purposeful reminiscent thing, or?
Yeah, kind of. It's it's mainly because like we use arcade buttons and joysticks and stuff because they're reliable and simple, and you can spill beer on them. It doesn't matter. But mostly because people understand them. So you can like walk into a place, see some buttons, and you know that you're gonna press them. They're not really a thing that you have to explain to people. If we used LED buttons that lit up, they were instantly more tactile and more like you'd walk over and press them before you knew what you're doing. So now I try to only use light up buttons. But yeah, that was mainly for accessibility and ease of use.
Could you talk a bit more specifically about a couple of like the actual events that you put on? It's quite varied, the different exhibitions that you pull. I ruined everything.
Yeah, it wasn't my ice machine this time.
Yeah, it just needed everyone to know that it's one.
Cool. So we've put on a lot of different exhibitions. Like we had our Delete event, which was a game jam that took place over a day, and started off in about 11 in the morning, and people made games, and then by 7 o'clock they put them up to display, and people came in and played them, and then at midnight we destroyed them and deleted all evidence, and that was really fun, and there's a really good write-up of that. And then we've also had stuff like things that have targeted more local audiences, like an RMIT show last year, and we've done the Work in Progress Wednesdays, which have been really good. And it's really good seeing the sort of cross-pollination of that happen, especially in this space.
How is it important for creators, whether it's in games or other things, to have sort of casual spaces like this where they can interact with each other and like see other people's art?
I found it's been really interesting and very important. Like the whole physical space where you can play games and see games and show games has been great in terms of feedback, in terms of people just feeling like their game's actually getting somewhere. Like we've tried to be very open with the local students and local developers, and encourage them to show their stuff, to see people enjoying it, people playing it, and it feels so much better than just releasing it online and seeing download counts go up. Like it's from experience, I got way more out of the first time I showed a game as opposed to when I worked on games in mobile games. Like showing stuff is very different, and a lot of the stuff we show you also generates a lot of interesting conversation around it as well. A lot of feedback conversation, a lot of design conversation, a lot of interesting stuff that people wouldn't think of on their own.
Yeah.
Especially when they're in a bar talking about stuff to someone who might be a visual artist or an architect or a lawyer. They get a completely different point of view than they would if they were sitting at home trying to come up with these solutions themselves.
Well, we're going to wrap up in a second. To close, I guess, looking back at your place in the community and having people come around and be able to show their games and see stuff, is there any advice you can give closing to people that are just entering the sort of realm of game making and interactive media?
Yeah, I think the main one is that everything's valid. Everything you make is valid. So, and there can be definitely times to show that off. Games that are on display here aren't, super finished or polished or anything, and they can be, some of them aren't even interactive. They can just be things that exist, and if you're comfortable with showing anything, bring it in and show us, and then, we can find a time to put it up. There is no sort of has to be this good to enter sort of thing. And that goes with just games in general. You don't have to make things to any sort of standard. There's what you are comfortable with is what you should do. And whatever you want to do is what you should do. And the more that you look outside of the regular AAA stuff and the regular games industry and you start find these cool fringe things, the more like inspiration you get to follow what you feel is where you're best creating. But also do what you want. Maybe that's going to work for Blizzard as a lead animator or something. Like that's totally valid as well. But yeah.